Here is a quick overview of the steps for the toilet paper project. Step 1 is to take notes and analyze the shape of the cylinder by taking notes on these images and then turning those in. Then it's a good idea to make a viewfinder. With a blank sheet of paper, you cut out 2 L shapes. Try not to make them too skinny. They don't have to be a definite size, but if it's too skinny, it might be too flimsy. I try to have a nice right angle. I have 1 L shape. And then I have a second L shape. Let's see. Check and see if they're pretty straight. This one's a little bit crooked, so let me go ahead and shave some of this off, straighten this up. These viewfinders are going to be used to help me find a good composition. And I'm going to put that to the side for a second. On a blank sheet of paper, you're doing some thumbnail drawings. You're putting your name at the top. And then you're doing these portrait style for this particular project. So portrait style means you're going to draw a box that is tall and skinny, like the sheet of your paper that you're going to use for the final drawing. So this is the shape of your final drawing paper. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, so this is the shape of your final drawing paper. So it needs to be the same shape of a rectangle. It can't be too skinny, it can't be a square. And so I am going to draw at least 3 boxes is the requirement. If you do a 4th one, that is up to you. So these are all portrait style. This would be called landscape, and this is what we don't want. So no for this project. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your viewfinder to help you find a good composition. And I'm going to try to make it a similar shape of a rectangle. So it's not a square, it's not a skinny rectangle, and it's portrait style. And then I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to look at my composition. So this is going to help me decide where I need to draw and how big I need to draw this toilet paper. So I don't want it to have too much negative space, so I don't want my rectangle to be too large, so I'm going to close it in. I don't want to draw the toilet paper being chopped off the edge of the paper. And so then what I do is I take a mental snapshot of this, and then I come back to my thumbnails, which is my quick sketch. And then I draw what I see inside of my viewfinder. Once I get my quick sketch on there, I'd look back at my notes, make sure that I drew the cylinder correctly. And then I'm going to put a fake table edge on there. I don't want it too low because then the toilet paper would fall off that fake table edge. And then I reposition the toilet paper in a different point of view. So maybe this time I want it to be laying down. Kind of play with it till you get a good shape, something interesting. Then I look back through my viewfinder and it still needs to be that rectangle. So this time I need to make the viewfinder a little bit larger to capture it, or I could kind of shrink it down and then have part of that toilet paper on this end going off the edge of the page. So again, I'm taking a mental shot. I'm seeing where is it located. It's up in this corner of the viewfinder. And then I'm going to come back down. And I am going to draw what I see. So it's off in this corner. This goes at a little bit of an angle. It's a pretty skinny oval for my cylinder. And I'm looking at every shape that I see, looking at angles. It's just a quick sketch. And then I'm going to reposition the toilet paper and draw it a third way. And then when I'm done, so here I'm imagining a table edge again. When I'm done, I'm going to number these, number 1, number 2, and number 3. And then I'm going to decide which one is my favorite composition, and I'm going to either put a star or circle it. So I think I kind of like how this comes out towards me. So this is the one that I plan on doing for my final artwork. Or if you like this one, for whatever reason, you could choose that. Then what you're going to do is take your final drawing paper, reposition the toilet paper the way that you had it in your choice. So if I chose this one, I have to reposition my toilet paper. And then I am going to come back to my viewfinder, make sure it's the same shape as my paper, and I'm going to hold it up, look through it, and I'm going to do a much more careful drawing this time. So I am looking through my viewfinder, getting it exactly the way that I want it. Remember, we're not doing landscape for this one. And then I could even, once I got a good, so I don't want it to be too skinny, I don't want it to be a square, same shape of a rectangle, right about there. I can tape this together. So I'm just taping these corners so I don't have to deal with it moving. And I'm going to use this viewfinder to help me catch that composition. So I am going to go back and I'm going to analyze it again. How big is the toilet paper? There's quite a bit of negative space right here. And it is, let's see, let me go a little closer to it. And if this is like the halfway point, it dips down a little bit below halfway. So I'm going to try to draw the major shape in the right corner by looking at that negative space and helping me. So I'm really thinking about where does it hit inside of this frame. And then I'm going to come down here. And then I'm going to draw that snapshot. So something like this. It is pretty close to this end, but not touching. There is about that much negative space. And I'm just drawing that basic sketch, and then I'm going to go back in and add all of that detail in a little bit. So let's see. I know that I would have to have this line kind of going this way, and then this point and this point is where that cylinder, or sorry, is where that ellipse would be. I know that this is kind of going away from me, so these would kind of converge back to a vanishing point. And then I'm going to figure out where the fold, I'm going to figure out where it unfolds. Looking at contact point. So right here is where the toilet paper comes out. Everything that is closer to me is going to be larger, so I might even make this fold that I see a little bit larger. When I get done with this, and then now I'm looking at where the next contact point, so this fold hits right about here, so I'm looking up here at contact point. So that is starting right about there. And then I'm capturing that angle. And then I'm looking at the next contact point right about here. And you should be drawing this very lightly in case you're making mistakes. Comes out. Wraps around and out. And there's like a little section where you rip it off right there. If you're drawing the toilet paper from this point of view, there's a couple of things that you want to check. You want to draw a horizontal line, and you want to make sure that this peak right here lines up with this one, and see how mine is way too low. So that's going to tell me this needs to go up here so that those are ending on that same horizontal line. You also want to make sure that whatever curve you have here, that this bottom curve is even more curvy. So see how that dips down a little lower. And then when you are doing that inside ellipse, you want to make sure that this gap is smaller and this gap is wider, but that these two gaps are equal. So I'm going to use my pencil and I'm going to make sure that these are equal. And it looks like I'm okay with that. And then I'm going to check the back and compare it to the front, because this needs to be a smaller gap and that needs to be a wider gap. Because anything that's closer to me is wider and anything that's farther away from me is going to be skinnier. Okay, so skinny, wider, and then equal distances on both sides. If you're drawing the toilet paper with a point of view where it's laying on its side and these edges are going away from you, you need to make sure that they are not parallel. So parallel would mean that you have equal distance here and an equal distance here. They're at the same exact angle. They need to look like they're converging instead towards a vanishing point. So if I have this line here and this line here, eventually they would meet somewhere far, far, far away to a dot. So this back end needs to be skinnier than this front end, and it is, so that's going to be okay. The other thing you need to check is, and I can extend these out so it's a little bit easier, is you're going to draw a line. It's going to be almost a right angle from the top of your oval here to the bottom of your oval, so the farthest points. And when I say right angle, I mean a right angle here, so like 90 degrees and 90 degrees. It's going to be almost like that. So double check and make sure you have almost 90-degree angles here. And then you're going to check these peaks. So this part right here of the oval needs to be on that dot, on that line. And this other part, see how I have it falling short? I need to extend that out so that it reaches that dot as well. Modify this oval a little bit. The oval for the center of the toilet paper needs to be on this line as well. You want to make sure that the gap up here is the same distance as the gap down here, and I don't have it like that, so I need to extend this down a little bit more. And then things that are closer to you are going to be wider. So in this point of view, this should be wider than this, and right now it's not. So I'm going to extend this out just a little bit more. And then I'm going to make this back side skinnier. And then erase my excess. And then see if I have it better. So this should be skinnier, and this should be wider. And it's not too much wider, so extend that out a little bit more. Make this a little bit skinnier. And then that's going to be more accurate that way. Make sure that this is nice and rounded at the top. There you go. So equal distances here compared to here. And then skinnier and wider. So at some point in your drawing, go back and again look at your contact points. Remember, a contact point is where one contour intersects with another. So how far over on this line does this piece of toilet paper start? And then go back and double check your drawing. Mine could probably be over just a little bit more on that point. Or where does this line intersect with this line? You can use something called sighting angles. So with sighting angles, you got to make sure that your paper is nice and straight in front of you, parallel to your body, and then your still life is straight in front of that. If your paper is crooked at all compared to your body, this technique will not work, so nice and straight. And what you do is you hold your arm and you lock it out. So if you look at my elbow, it's nice and straight, it's not bent, so locked out arm. You pinch the end of the pencil, and you have this nice and parallel to your body too, so it's not flopped out like this, nice and parallel. And then you close one eye so you can see the pencil and the toilet paper at the same time. If your both eyes are open, one or the other is going to be blurry and it's going to be impossible for you to do this. So close one eye. This is nice and straight out in front of you. And then you're going to rotate the pencil until it matches up on one of the angles that you're trying to capture. And then you can open your eye, watch your pencil, and then watch it as it drops. Wherever it hits on the table is fine. Then you slide it, oops, I didn't mean to move my paper. You slide it without losing that angle, and then if it matches up with your drawing, you did it right. So this line for me is fine. I'm going to go to the next angle. Again, closing one eye, my arm is locked out. I rotate the pencil until it matches up. So here's straight. I'm going to rotate it until it matches up on that angle. And then I'm going to open my other eye, so both eyes are open. I'm going to carefully look at the pencil as it falls. Wherever it falls is fine. Then I'm going to hold that angle and drag it to where it needs to go. So this is telling me that I drew this line wrong. I drew it too steep of an angle, so I would need to go ahead and lift this up, redraw it at that correct angle. And then I'm going to double check because I could have lost it. So close one eye, arm is locked out, pinching the end of the pencil, rotate it until it lines up with that bottom edge of the toilet paper. Open both eyes so I can just concentrate on dropping the pencil wherever it falls is fine. And then drag it down. And then make sure that my new angle is right. If not, draw it right. And then I can fix up my toilet paper by getting rid of that old angle, and now I know that my drawing is that much more accurate. I would continue to do this for any angle that I have inside of this piece. So I would do it for the folds, like the top of that fold. I would right there. I would do it for the bottom of that fold, the end of the toilet paper. I would even do it for any one of these angles, even though there's a dip in that angle. So again, I would hold my pencil, tilt it to that angle, open both eyes, watch it as it drops, and then drag it down to the angle that I am now concerned with. So there is an angle, it's hard to see with that lighting, but there's an angle there that I'm a little bit off with that too. This needs to kind of come out more at an angle towards me. So check all your angles, check your contact points. Make sure that you've drawn it big enough. If it's not big enough, go ahead and redraw it larger. And then once I have a good composition, and I think that the proportions are pretty correct, that's when I'm going to go back and draw detail. I'm going to go look at this. I'm going to say, okay, this toilet paper flattens out. Actually, it goes back at this angle. It flattens out from the weight of it. It is not perfect. There's little dips and bumps Kind of flattens out right there. Flattens out right there. Just drawing what I see. There's like a little bump. And I'm drawing pretty dark so that you guys can see, but I want you to draw super light so you just can barely see it. Now you notice I was wrong here. This piece of the toilet paper kind of starts right there a little bit of a dip and a bump. These dips and bumps that you capture are going to make your project look more realistic. Instead of this perfect cylinder, you're going to have something that is a little bit more natural. Don't draw what you don't see, but really look for all of these subtle flat spots. Draw every little detail you possibly can. And so I go and I'd fix this up. I'm going to have my imagined table edge somewhere on there. Not too low, again, where this would fall off. When I draw this circle right here, technically, you would have a larger gap here and a smaller gap here. So I'm going to draw this back a little bit because this part is farther away from me. So whatever's closer up, make sure that this gap is wider, that gap is smaller, and then the gap up and down right here, I think I can make that basically the same size. So I can measure and be okay with that, and this should be smaller and that should be a wider gap. Because if it's closer to me, it's going to have a wider gap. If it's farther away, it's going to be a smaller gap. Okay, so check the gaps when it comes to this inside circle. And then we can go ahead and start shading.